off you go.
Okay, we're starting here with a simple square. It's got sides of 1. And using the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right here we can show that if this side is 1, then we put 1 into a, and this side it would be b, we put 1 into b. 1 squared plus 1 squared equals c squared. C is this diagonal. And 1 plus 1, of course, is 2. 2 equals c squared. Taking the square root of both sides, square root of 2 equals c. We know that this diagonal length is the square root of 2. The amazing thing that the Greeks proved 2,500 years ago is that this square root of 2 equals 1.41 ... We now call this an irrational number. That means it goes forever. These digits go to infinity. The Greeks were shocked by this, and there's a legend they actually killed the guy who discovered it. You can find this on Wikipedia, irrationality of the square root of 2. So what this proves is there are things in mathematics that the finite cannot represent. It requires the infinite. It was later discovered that if you take a circle and measure the circumference of the circle and divide that by the diameter, I have the ratio, the radius there, but the diameter is all the way across. That ratio is called pi. Pi is equal to the circumference divided by the diameter. And that's, of course, 3.14159 and on and on and on. So a square has infinity in it, a circle has infinity in it, and if we draw an equilateral triangle, we will discover that the altitude, the height from the base up to this peak, is a multiple of the square root of 3, and that's also one of these irrational numbers that goes forever. It turns out that the square root of x, any whole number, almost always is irrational. Just a few, the perfect squares are not. So for me, this helped me recognize that in mathematics itself, there are simple figures that have infinity built into them. Now when we go to physics, this famous equation equals mc squared, which was came out of Albert Einstein's 1905 paper on special relativity, shows us that a small amount of matter, m in kilograms, times the speed of light in meters per second squared is equal to the energy in that matter. This is energy mass equivalence equation. You can find it on Wikipedia. And c is 300 million meters per second. When you square this number, you get a giant number. You get 90 quadrillion. So if you change this into pounds, a kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So 1 pound is about a half a kilogram. You do the math, and I have gone to the Los Alamos paper. Los Alamos is where the first atomic bombs were assembled, and found out how much energy was released in the first atomic bombs, the first 3, the one at Trinity, the one at Hiroshima, and the one at Nagasaki, and found out that about 540 atomic bombs of energy are in a 1 pound loaf of bread. If you were to release all the energy in the matter in the nuclei of that loaf of bread, it would release this much energy, 540 atomic bombs. The opposite direction is also true. It takes that much energy to produce that pound loaf of bread from scratch in the first place. So this brings up the mind-boggling truth that Psalm 33, 6, and 9 proclaims, "By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. For he spake, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast." That tells us that the amount of energy required to create not only a loaf of bread, but a human body, to say nothing of the planet Earth or the solar system or the Milky Way, is unimaginably large. And we know this equation is true because we have physical evidence, the atomic bombs, nuclear power plants. There's no question about this. And The math here is rock solid. It goes back to the days of the Greeks 2,500 years ago. The beauty in this is when the Greeks talk about, when we talk about ratios, we say ratio, a Latin word. They say logos. And in John 1:1-3, and verse 14 it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men." That word here in English is logos in Greek. And in verse 14 it says, "And the Word, the Logos, was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we have beheld His glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." So John is saying this fundamental principle that the Greeks were searching for in mathematics is not a principle of math, it's a person. And that person is Jesus Christ, who came in human flesh. And that person is our Creator. You can't have two mothers, biologically speaking. That's why Christianity is the only true religion. We have one Creator. And if you go to the last chapter in the Bible, Revelation 22, and look at verse 13, it says, "I am the Alpha and the Omega," and depends on which version you're at, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. So Christ makes the claim that He's the basis of all knowledge. He also said, "I'm the light of the world, I'm the bread of life." Why is that? This is the reason. Because He's the Creator. So, speaking as a scientist, I say we have to have science and Scripture combined. It's like water, H2O. The water molecule is made of hydrogen and oxygen. Two hydrogen connected to one oxygen. If you separate that, you have hydrogen gas and oxygen gas, an explosive mixture. You can't understand water as two gases. To understand reality of water, they have to come together. Same with the universe. To understand the reality of the universe, you have to understand Scripture in combination with science.
Awesome. So your credentials are what?
So I was in college, I became a Christian, I dropped out. I went south, I'm from Michigan, and I went back to school. I can't go to the whole story, and I took nuclear technology. I was going to work in a nuclear power plant. And I got, as you might imagine, with the Lord's blessing, 4.0 super grades. I went to the company that ran the nuclear power plants. I thought I'd have no problem. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I keep Saturday for Sabbath, seventh day, based on the fourth commandment. And they said, "We can't accommodate you." So I had spent all that time and money, had a family, blown out of the water. However, and I can't go into all the miracles, it turns out instead of working in a nuclear power plant, Oak Ridge National Lab, where the uranium was processed for the Hiroshima bomb, hired me to work for them as a health physics technician in Grand Junction, Colorado, where the uranium was assembled. I can't go into all that story, but my family, I have two daughters, we were there for 13 years. While I was there, I went back to school and I took all kinds of statistics classes, and I became a statistician for them. I got an interdisciplinary degree in math, computer science, and statistics. And in April of 1997, I was having my devotions, and I got this idea right out of the blue on statistical software that we started developing, and Pacific Northwest National Lab got so excited about that they sent down a van, they packed all our furniture, they put our car in the van, and they flew our family. That's why we're up here. Visual Sample Plan, you can Google it. They're still maintaining that software. So in 2000, I started my own business, Davidson Incorporated, went all over the country doing environmental statistics seminars, subcontracting to Bechtel, a big engineering firm. They lost their contract. To make a long story short, I went to work for the company that they lost it to, Washington Closure Hanford. They're in the process of closing down. So now, starting tomorrow, I'm starting a business to not just focus on environmental problems, but to take these world-class quality issues that I've been exploring to other companies.
Audience, yeah, sure.
And
Let me ask you, in science, have you encountered the science behind dark energy or dark matter, or there's sort of have you heard of this?
oh yeah, dark matter and dark energy are unknown. That's why it's called dark. We don't know. And my own personal, this I can't prove, I think it will always be true that the more we learn, if we don't include God in the equation, there will be dark stuff.
Right.
And that's really what's going on here. There is no finite number for that length. There is no finite ratio. And the same is true, I believe, of the universe. God is infinite. And the universe reflects that infinity. And so physics will always have unexplained stuff. I don't know what dark matter is. I don't know what dark energy is. But I do know that the majority of the matter in the universe currently is considered dark matter.
Yeah, with the creation power or the creating power behind, dark matter or dark energy, I don't know what the claim is or what that's the source of it is or what it says that it can do.
It's out of my area of expertise. I'm more in the probability mathematics end. In general, I believe if I take a cell, for example, and I study that cell to the nth degree, like the square root of 2, there will always be things I can't explain.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reason that cell exists is an infinite intelligence interposed here, creation week.
Mm-hmm.
And we are encouraged to study creation. It's not wrong. But when we try to explain reality without God, we have made an idol of nature. The second commandment says, "Thou shalt have no other gods
Before me."
And well, that's the first. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And then the one about the idols. I think
Don't worship an idol.
Yeah. So we're making an idol of nature. I don't like to tell my scientist friends that. It sounds pretty crude. But whether I worship a stick and say, "You're my God," or I worship the sun,
Mm-hmm.
or I worship this evolutionary chance-based process, I'm worshiping nature.
Yep. That's created
And
by the
Romans
Creator.
1, I'm sure you probably read Romans 1, it explicitly says that God has allowed people, if they reject Him, He will allow them to go down this route, and it will lead to great tragedy. Read Romans 1, the last 10, 20 verses there, 10, 15 verses, explains the moral debacle that will result when people reject the Creator. We're seeing it. So.
Well, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Good talk.